I never fully believed that certain discoveries carried intentions of their own. But today I recognize that there are places where time seems to wait patiently for someone specific. Places that do not want to be found by everyone, only by those who, for reasons that escape human logic, carry within themselves the right frequency, the right echo, the call that matches the silence sleeping there for centuries. And it was exactly this sensation that accompanied me the day I received the box that changed my entire life. I was alone in my improvised office, surrounded by piles of old reports, yellowed notebooks from dead expeditions, and maps that modern scholars had discarded as folklore. It was past midnight, and the silence in that room wasn't peaceful, it was heavy, filled with pauses that resembled breathing. The wind barely moved outside. The lamp flickered. When I heard the soft thud of wood against the floor, I didn't believe it at first. I stood up slowly, as if someone were watching me. In the doorway, resting like an accusation or invitation, was a dark wooden box with no seals, no address, no marking that revealed its origin. Only my name, carved by hand, not written, engraved, as if an ancient tool had cut into the wood fibers. Inside it, I found a scroll so fragile my hands trembled in fear of turning it into dust. The smell that emanated from that document carried the unmistakable scent of old humidity, sealed stone, and extinct plant fibers. There was no mistaking it. The scroll had been kept hidden for centuries, perhaps millennia, far from light and human manipulation. When I unrolled it, the dust that rose from it was thin and subtle, like touching the dead skin of time itself. It was a map, but not a common one. The lines were irregular, drawn with ancient mineral pigment soaker, ferruginous, bluish, and the symbols did not belong to any standardized writing system I recognized. Some resembled proto-alphabets, others felt closer to ideograms, and others looked like ritual markings. Nothing on that scroll belonged to a single culture. It felt as if the document had been made to be read by someone who no longer existed. In the lower corner, 3 inscriptions caught my eye. 2,800 lost years. Forbidden chamber. Do not return. I spent hours staring at that fragment of history. It presented altitude markings, circular annotations, pathways that disappeared under thicker lines, indications of burial. That map wasn't a guide. It wasn't a traveler's record. It wasn't an excavation plan. It was a warning. And yet, somewhere deep in my chest, I felt something unmistakable. It was calling me. Not in a poetic sense physically, like a mild electrical pull, a gravitational whisper, as if I were a piece needed to complete the forgotten mechanism of a much older machine. I followed the map. It took me 3 days to reach the described Regina remote desert with no names in modern charts. The few locals who still spoke of that place called it the 7 Dunes of Silence. They said the wind did not speak there, that the silence swallowed footsteps, that even breathing felt too loud. When I arrived, I understood immediately. The horizon was formed by fixed dunes, unmoving, as if the wind respected that place. The sand felt denser, almost inorganic. Every step left deep marks, like walking over something that did not want to be disturbed. The sun was rising, but the world remained drenched in a blue light that froze everything in a state of immobility. I followed the map until I found something that shouldn't exist there. A dark, polished monolith, tall enough to project a disproportionate shadow across the sand. When I placed my hand against its surface, I felt warmth not from the sun, but internal warmth, impossible to explain, as if something beneath the stone were pulsing. The inscriptions were nearly erased, but the spiral symbol 3 coils sealed by a vertical line appeared clearly. It matched the symbol on the map. One I had seen before, in tombs marked forbidden, in caverns scholars claimed were pre-iconographic, in rituals labeled proto-hominid symbolic maturation. But all that academic language fell short. The spiral crossed by a closing line always meant one thing: ritual sealing, not protection, not guardianship, but definitive burial. The morning sun struck the monolith from an angle that revealed something unseen before. A narrow passage, barely 40 centimeters wide. I had to turn sideways to enter. The air inside was cold, motionless, carrying the scent of freshly broken stone, even though nothing there had been touched for centuries. My footsteps echoed with an odd delay, as if the sound traveled into unseen corridors. I touched the walls. They vibrated faintly, like part of a living structure. As I moved forward, inscriptions emerged, elongated human figures, impossible proportions, ritual gestures, cylindrical objects, and scenes of kneeling before taller beings encircled by carved halos of repeating patterns. At the end of the passage stood a stone door, not a fallen slab, an engineered door, perfectly fitted, carved above it. No one should open. My heart pounded. An instinctive ancestral fear tried to hold me back. I pressed forward anyway, and when the door opened, I entered, for the first time, the realm of the 2,800 lost years. When the stone door finally gave way, the sound that echoed through the corridor wasn't the expected scrape of rock against rock. It was deeper, heavier, like something being awakened. A vibration rippled through the floor, climbed the walls, and traveled straight into my bones. For a brief moment, I considered stepping back, but the air itself seemed to push me forward, as if the chamber were eager to reveal what it had guarded for so long. My lantern cut through the darkness, but the darkness didn't retreat. It absorbed the light. It swallowed it. The chamber was vast, far larger than anything that could logically exist beneath the desert. For a moment, I thought my eyes deceived me, but the echo of my own breath confirmed the immensity of that space. Somewhere above, in a ceiling lost to shadows, droplets of water fell in slow, rhythmic intervals, like the heartbeat of some dormant creature. As I walked deeper, the light finally found the first columns. Dozens of them, arranged in concentric circles. Each was carved from an unusual bluish stone that I had never seen in any archaeological context. Dub. The columns glowed faintly, an internal luminescence that rose and fell like a breathing pattern. It wasn't phosphorescence. It wasn't chemical. It felt alive. The floor beneath me was impossibly smooth. Too smooth to be natural. Too perfectly polished to have been shaped with ancient tools. My steps fell softly, as if cushioned by a layer of dust that refused to move, as if gravity itself was different inside that place. At the center of the chamber lay a circular pedestal. Resting on it was a stone box, perfectly symmetrical, carved not as joined pieces, but as a single solid block. It had no hinges, no seams. It looked impossible. Surrounding this pedestal were the walls of the chamber, covered in inscriptions so intricate and interconnected that they felt less like carvings and more like a living mural. I moved the lantern closer. The first thing I noticed was the absence of a linear narrative. There was no beginning, no end. The carvings formed the fragmented chronology, memories of a culture that refused to be understood. The figures depicted were elongated, their proportions unnatural. They held cylindrical objects, pointed to the sky, knelt before taller beings surrounded by carved halos that created the illusion of movement. And then my breath caught. The stars. One wall showed constellations carved with astonishing accuracy, precise enough that I immediately recognized them. But the sky depicted wasn't our sky. It was the sky as it appeared 2,800 years ago. Perfect. Wrong for today. Perfect for then. Someone saw that sky. Someone carved it here. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat louder than the one before. Hand trembling, I touched the wall. The stone was cold, yet pulsing faintly as if energy flowed beneath it. Then I approached the pedestal. The box of stone rejected my touch. I felt a strange resistance, as if it sensed my presence. Its surface was smooth but carried subtle undulations, microscopic oscillations responding to the warmth of my fingertips. When I slid the lantern across its side, something caught the light. Scratches, deep ones. Scratches made by fingernails, human fingernails. Someone had tried desperately to open or close that box. Alongside the scratches, a message was carved in frantic strokes. They return. The room suddenly felt smaller. My throat tightened. D. The lantern flickered as a faint hum spread through the chamber, not external, but internal, like vibration trapped within the stone. I crouched beside the pedestal to study its base. The craftsmanship defied logic. No ancient culture known to history could shape stone like this. As I examined the underside of the box, a small depression caught my attention. A nearly invisible panel, carved with such precision it blended into the box's geometry. I pressed it gently. The reaction was immediate. The chamber trembled. The columns pulsed with light. The air thickened, and the box sealed for centuries, perhaps millennia, opened by itself, splitting with a softness that no mechanism of its age should possess. I held my breath. Whatever lay inside was not meant for ordinary eyes. When the box finally opened, the sound that emerged from its interior was not the dry echo of stone against stone. It was muted, deep, almost organic, as if I had interrupted the slumber of something that had been resting there for generations. The lid moved with a softness impossible for a monolithic block. It felt as though the box had obeyed a silent command, as though it recognized the moment of its unveiling. My lantern illuminated the inside. There was only one object, not bones, not relics, not fragments of ritual tools, just a single metallic cylinder lying at the center of the stone cavity, its simplicity so stark that it became immediately unsettling. It was about 20 centimeters long and impossibly light in a way that defied its apparent density. Its surface shifted with the movement of the lantern's beam, sometimes deep blue, sometimes burnt gold, sometimes an absolute black that swallowed light entirely. As I stared, the patterns on its surface shifted like liquid metal responding to unseen currents. No known ancient technology or modern behaved like that. I reached out and hesitated. There was something almost alive about the object. Not literally breathing, but it radiated an awareness that pressed against my instincts. I felt watched, evaluated, judged. It wasn't fear that held me back. It was recognition. Even so, I touched it. The reaction was immediate. The cylinder grew hot, not gradually and steadily. A wave of heat surged through my fingers, up my arm, and into my chest like a silent electric jolt. I tried to drop it, but something, whether physical or psychological, held my grip for a second too long. In that moment, the entire chamber responded. The columns brightened. The floor vibrated. The air thickened with a pressure so dense it felt like stepping underwater. Then I heard it, not with my ears, with my mind. A low hum pressed against the inside of my skull, vibrating in frequencies that felt foreign and ancient. The sound layered over itself, forming patterns, intonations, the ghost of language, not words, not speech, but intent, meaning. A communication aimed at something deep inside me, something older than consciousness. My vision blurred. The cylinder pulsed. The chamber's temperature rose as though some forgotten mechanism had awakened. The cylinder's surface shifted again, patterns forming and dissolving, spirals tightening, triangles splitting, circles appearing and disappearing like breathing symbols. I recognized echoes of markings I had seen carved into walls of sites considered prehistoric, dismissed by scholars as symbolic noise, but now they lived. Then just as suddenly everything stopped. The cylinder cooled. The chamber quieted. The columns dimmed. Relief washed over me. But it was short-lived. I looked down and froze. I remembered exactly where the cylinder had fallen the moment I dropped it, but it wasn't there. It had moved, shifted, slid across the perfectly flat floor closer to me, closer than it should have been. The floor had no incline, no texture, no reason for movement. I reached for it again, and it moved barely, but undeniably, as if recoiling or adjusting, as if watching me. The hum returned, stronger this time. My heart pounded. Something primal inside me recoiled. I stepped back, my breath uneven, and then the impossible happened. The figures carved into the chamber walls, the elongated beings with unnatural limbs and heads, began to glow. Light seeped from inside the stone itself. Shadows danced around them in slow, deliberate patterns. In that moment it felt as though the figures were not static carvings. They were responding. Some seemed to turn slightly, their elongated faces tilting toward me. Others pointed toward the cylinder. Others toward the ceiling, as though anticipating something. The air vibrated in waves. The scent changed ozone, minerals, the sharp tang of lightning trapped in stone. Panic clawed at my ribs, and then the symbol appeared. 3 concentric circles, sliced by a vertical line, the same sealed spiral from the monolith, from the map, from the chamber door. The same ritual seal, the same warning. I wasn't holding an artifact. I was holding a key, a trigger, a catalyst, a piece of something the ancients had fought to bury. The vibration increased again. My ears rang. Instinct told me to flee, to put the object back, to erase my presence from that place. The moment my fingers brushed the cylinder a second time, it went still, but the chamber did not. The floor pulsed, alive. The walls breathed. The figures glowed with intent. And in my chest, beneath ribs shaking from fear, I felt a certainty settle. The object hadn't simply awakened, it had recognized me. The silence that settled over the chamber after the last vibration was not a peaceful silence. It was a dangerous one, the kind that precedes revelation. The air felt heavier, as if saturated with an invisible charge that crawled across my skin. My ears still rang from the resonance of the cylinder, though I couldn't tell whether the sound lingered in my mind or in the chamber itself. I drew a long, steady breath, trying to regain clarity, but the room refused to release its grip on me. It felt alive, alert, aware. I knelt beside the open box again. Its interior was smooth, impossibly precise, far too refined to have been carved with ancient tools. The corners were crisp, the cavity symmetrical, the polish unnatural. Running my fingers along the interior, I felt a faint magnetic pull, subtle yet undeniable, as if the stone held metallic particles arranged in an order far beyond simple craftsmanship, brushing away a layer of ancient dust. I uncovered tiny fragments of dark fibers, what might have once been cloth, but the texture didn't match anything I knew. It wasn't leather, fabric, plant fiber, or mineral. It was something in between, as if organic and inorganic materials had fused into one. Time had destroyed most of it, but the remnants sent a shiver through me. Whatever the box once held, the cylinder had not been alone. I stood and once again surveyed the walls. Now that my eyes had adjusted more to the breathing light of the columns, new details revealed themselves, details that had been hiding in the shadows. I noticed faint inscriptions near the floor, half buried under centuries of dust. Carefully, I swept the surface clean. What I found made my heart slam against my ribs. The words were Portuguese, not modern Portuguese, archaic, closer to the style of the 1600s. Someone had been here before me, someone from my world, my language, my lineage of explorers and scholars. My hands trembled as the letters slowly emerged. I, who descend here by order of the crown. I froze. I continued reading, breath shallow. Cannot say if these hands still write by my own will. The object responds. The object observes. The object waits. A surge of cold rolled through me. The handwriting was elegant, educated. A man of learning, a man of rank, a man sent with purpose. The name, however, was lost to erosion. Only two initials remained. EQ, the same initials I had seen earlier. Someone had tried to warn whoever came after. I leaned closer, reading the next lines carved hurriedly, shakily, as if written moments before disaster. They sleep, but they listen. The room closes from within. Do not take anything, anything. If the cylinder awakens, do not look at the walls. I will return at the rising of the third sun. If you do not hear my name, do not seek me. My fingertips touched the grooves of the final letters. The text ended abruptly with scratches that looked less like writing and more like desperation. Deep gouges in the stone suggested someone had tried to cling to the wall while being pulled away. They resembled the scratch marks on the side of the box. Whoever EQ was, he had not escaped peacefully. I lifted my lantern, scanning the chamber with new understanding. The elongated figures carved on the walls, the ones I had assumed to be symbolic now, felt like direct representation. Their proportions were not artistic exaggerations. They were literal. Their elongated faces, narrow skulls, and impossible limbs. These were eyewitness accounts carved into stone, and the realization made my blood run cold. In the northwest corner of the chamber, I discovered a niche carved into the wall. Inside it lay a small pile of decomposing pages paper, leather, something preserved in the dryness of the chamber. Someone had hidden them deliberately. I examined the fragments, careful not to crumble them. Most were too deteriorated to read, but 3 remained partially intact. The first page bore the initials EQ again. It contained a brief, chilling sentence. They did not come from the sky. They came from below. I felt my stomach twist. All of history speaks of gods descending from the heavens. But this explorer implied the opposite. What if the earliest teachers, those who shaped myths, architecture, ritual, were not celestial? What if they were terrestrial, subterranean, hidden? The second page was worse. It described observations in broken phrases. Move without sound. Respond to touch. Cannot be sealed forever. The third page chilled me to the bone. It contained a rough sketch of the cylinder surrounded by triangular warning symbols. Lines marking vibration. Spirals representing danger. And beneath it scrawled in trembling strokes, "If the columns pulse 3 times, flee." My blood ran cold. The columns had already pulsed 3 times. A wave of dread swept over me. I approached the nearest column cautiously and placed my palm against it. It was warm, far warmer than before. I watched as the light inside it shifted, almost flowing. The minerals weren't static, they pulsated, contracting and expanding like capillaries filled with luminous fluid. Then I saw it. The northern wall where the 3 tall beings stood carved in stone glowed brighter. Light seeped outward from the etchings. Tiny fissures formed around the figures, spiderwebbing outward. They weren't random cracks. They were deliberate, coordinated. Opening, it felt impossible, but the wall seemed to be loosening itself. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the pedestal. The box sat open, silent, empty but no longer harmless. I understood now why it was sealed with the spiral sigil. The cylinder was not an artifact. It was containment, a mechanism, a piece of something the ancients did everything to bury. The chamber vibrated again, this time stronger. Dust trickled from the ceiling. The glow intensified, the walls trembling with a rhythm I recognized all too well. Something was waking. Something the ancients had feared, something EQ had tried to warn about, something E, through ignorance, curiosity, or fate had triggered. and whatever it was had waited 2,800 years for a moment exactly like this. I emerged from the chamber like someone rising from deep water, lungs burning with air that felt different from the one I had breathed before entering. The narrow passage behind me groaned like a closing mouth, sealing itself slowly until only darkness remained. My hands were coated in ancient dust. My pulse echoed with the phantom resonance of the cylinder. The desert greeted me with its indifferent facade, wind sweeping over dunes in perfect silence, the sun bleaching the horizon with merciless clarity. To anyone else, nothing had changed, but something had changed. Not only in me, in the place itself. In the days that followed, I tried to behave like a scientist. I collected samples, dust, fragments from the pedestal, small chips from the box. I waited for the analysis to offer grounding mineral compositions, isotopic anomalies, measurable data that could anchor the experience in reason. The reports did the opposite. The metallic fragments contained elemental signatures not found in any known alloy. Crystal particles displayed piezoelectric behaviors far beyond anything recorded naturally. Residual organic traces held sequences unidentifiable by any catalog. The instruments reduced everything to charts and numbers, but the numbers only deepened the chasm opening inside me. Then came the reactions from humans. Some colleagues described my findings as anomalous artifacts. Others, less delicate, called them fabrications. A few, with soft voices and tense eyes, urged silence. Meetings took place behind closed doors. Phone calls were redirected. Access to my files flickered. I felt the invisible machinery of academic preservation grinding into motion, not to reveal knowledge but to bury it, to fold it into obscurity, to let time swallow the inconvenient once again. But there was another kind of evidence science couldn't quantify, memory, and my memory refused to go quiet. At night, the hum returned of faint buzzing deep in my skull. Dreams surfaced, carrying images that didn't belong to me. Underground chambers lit by blue veins of stone, rivers flowing backward, figures with elongated arms pressing their palms to ancient doors. Sometimes I heard voices, whispers in a language that wasn't speech but intention. Echoes of places I had never visited, from times I had never lived. It went beyond recollection. Something had been left in me. On the fourth day, I returned to the chamber, not out of bravery but compulsion. The monolith in the desert felt warmer, as if it remembered my touch. I squeezed through the narrow entrance again, carrying heavier equipment this time. Cameras, audio recorders, electromagnetic detectors, radiation sensors. Perhaps rationality could reclaim the territory my mind was losing. But the chamber had changed. The columns glowed with a different rhythm. Their pulses were irregular, almost agitated. The inscriptions were sharper, clearer as if newly carved. The pedestal lay bare. The cylinder was gone. For a moment, a strange relief washed through me, as if the object had moved on, as if it had chosen to leave. But the feeling vanished when I noticed something near the base of the pedestal, a fragment I had never seen before. A thin shard of material, unlike any of the other samples. Its surface bore microscopic engravings patterns, too small to be written by human hands. Under magnification, the lines revealed structure, syntax, intent, language. One line stood out. Record. Do not reveal fully. Risk of opening. The message was incomplete, truncated, as if time, or something else, had erased the rest. My breath grew shallow. The meaning was undeniable. The object wasn't merely an artifact. It was a protocol, a containment procedure. The ancients weren't only preserving knowledge, they were limiting it. Because whatever the cylinder was, whatever it communicated, it wasn't meant to be released. I searched the chamber again, hands shaking, until I found more of EQ's writings wedged into cracks in the stone. The pages felt delicate and feverish, as though carrying the last frantic thoughts of a man pushed to the edge of comprehension. One passage read, "They raise memories that are not ours. We see with eyes that do not belong to us. I hear names of lands I have never set foot in. I was summoned, not from above, but from below." His final line chilled me. "If this ever reaches the court, I will bury it myself." Beneath it was a trembling drawing, a door, surrounded by the triple spiral seal, a warning, a ritual, a gate. After reading it, urgency became physical, like a pulse beating against my ribs. Not merely academic urgency, survival. I tried documenting everything with the equipment I had brought. Cameras captured distortions in the airwaves of shimmer like heat mirages. Audio recorders registered faint tones beyond normal human hearing. Sensors spiked irregularly. And then the dreams worsened. I began losing hours, speaking words I didn't remember forming, sketching spirals unconsciously on the margins of notebooks. I knew the signs, not of madness, but of mimetic contamination. Some patterns alter perception itself. Some shapes transmit states of mind. Some symbols spread like infections. The cylinder was all three. I realized then what I had to do. I gathered my notes, images, and recordings, but removed the sequences, symbols, and activation patterns. I would not release those, not to colleagues, not to institutions, not to anyone. Some knowledge demands containment. Even now, rumors circulate, whispers in obscure forums, requests from private collectors, offers from groups hiding behind academic facades. They all want the cylinder, or what it awakens. But I made a choice. The one part of this discovery I will never release is the sequence that opens the chamber. Not because I fear ridicule, but because I fear accuracy. Some doors are sealed for reasons older than language, older than memory, older than civilization. To open them without understanding is to invite something into our world that has slept for 2,800 years, and that may not sleep again once awakened. So I leave this record incomplete, intentionally, consciously, just enough for future researchers to find the trail, not enough for anyone to finish it. The lost years remain beneath the dunes, waiting, listening, and sometimes at night when all is still, I feel the hum again, faint, familiar, as if the cylinder were calling across a distance that isn't geographical, a distance measured in time. The 2,800 lost years have not ended. They have only shifted.